Hello friends, busy for exams? Yes, you should be. Now I am going to give you a revision lecture on the perquisites given under the head Salaries. I am Dr. Anju Jain, Associate Professor in SPM College. First of all, I have given you a summary of allowances given under the head Salaries. Today we are going to give a revisionary class on perquisites, that is facilities given by the employer to the employees taxable under the head Salaries. Perquisites are taxable under three heads. The first, perquisites taxable for all type of employees. Second, perquisites exempted for all type of employees. And the third, the perquisites taxable for specified employees. Now we start with the facilities or perquisites taxable for all type of employees. Under this, the first is rent-free accommodation, whether it may be unfurnished or furnished. The second is any kind of obligation that is to be met by the employee but paid by employer. The third, any kind of life insurance premium obligation that is to be paid by the employee, paid by employer. All these facilities are taxable for all type of employees. Now we move on to the facilities. Those are exempted for all type of employees. Under this, the first is any kind of laptop or computer given by the employer to the employee for his official or personal purpose is exempted for all type of employees. Further, any kind of conveyance facility given to commute from office to residence and residence to office by the employer to the employee is exempted in the hands of employee. Further, any kind of health insurance done by the employer on the health of the employee and the premium is paid by the employer is exempted in the hands of employee. Further, any kind of sports facility given by the employer to the employee within his official working hours is exempted in the hands of employee. Now we move on to the third category, that is perquisites taxable for specified employees. Now first of all, we should understand the meaning of specified employee. The specified employees are maybe director of the company or the shareholder having 20% shares in the company, or the third, the employee getting monetary emoluments maximum of rupees 50,000. That is, if an employee is getting a salary of rupees 50,000 or more, he is termed as specified employee. In order to calculate the 50,000, we calculate all the monetary emoluments received by the employee like basic salary plus any kind of bonus, fees, commission plus all taxable allowances plus encashment of earned leave during the service plus pension received from any other employer. From this we deduct the deductions under section 16 and we get the monetary emoluments received by employee. If these monetary emoluments exceeds rupees 50,000, he is termed as specified employee. In the hands of the specified employee, any kind of obligation paid by the employer at his residence is taxable in the hands of specified employee, like the sweeper watchman facility provided by the employer at his residence is taxable in the hands of specified employee. Similarly, any kind of gas, electricity benefits are provided by the employer at the accommodation of the employer is taxable only in the hands of specified employee. Now we are going to know the calculation of rent-free accommodation. This rent-free accommodation is divided into two parts: the accommodation in the hands of central government employees and accommodation for other employees. In case of central government employees, the value of rent-free accommodation is decided by the central government, and then in this value we add 10% of the cost of furniture or the higher charges of furniture to get the value of furnished accommodation. From this we deduct any kind of rent recovered from the employee by the employer. In case of other employees, we have two categories of rent-free accommodation. First, the accommodation owned by the employer, and secondly, the accommodation taken on rent by the employer. Now the first case, when the accommodation is owned by the employer, we have three categories to calculate the value of rent-free accommodation. The first, if the population of the city is up to 10 lakh, in that case we take 7.5% of salary as the value of rent-free unfurnished accommodation. If the population is between 10 lakh to 25 lakh, then we take 10% of the salary as the value of rent-free unfurnished accommodation. If the population is more than 25 lakh, then we take 15% of the salary as the value of rent-free unfurnished accommodation. From this, we deduct any kind of rent recovered by the employer from the employee, and we add the 10% of the cost of furniture or the actual higher charges to make it rent-free furnished accommodation at concessional rent. That is, first adding the unfurnished value, then adding the furniture value, and then subtracting the rent recovered from the employee. This becomes the rent-free furnished accommodation at concessional rent. Now we have the facility of sweeper, watchman, gardener. If this sweeper, watchman, gardener facility is given by the employer at his residence, this is taxable only for specified employee. But if the sweeper, watchman, gardener is engaged by the employee at his own residence and their charges either are directly paid by the employer or reimbursed by the employer to the employee, this is taxable for all employees. But nowadays, maximum employees are getting more than 50,000 salary. Hence, this facility is taxable generally in all the cases, that is in the hands of each and every type of employee, whether it is specified or non-specified. Then we have the facility of gas, electricity and water. If the facility of gas, electricity and water is provided at the residence of the employee and the bills are directly paid by the employer or reimbursed by the employer to the employee, this is taxable for all types of employees. But if this facility is provided by the employer at his accommodation, this facility is taxable for specified employees only. But as I have told you just now, that nowadays generally employees are getting salary more than 50,000. So again, this facility is taxable for all types of employees. Further, we have medical facility. This medical facility and medical allowance, there are difference. If medical allowance is given to the employee, it is fully taxable irrespective of the expenditure. But if medical facility is given by the employer, this has three dimensions. First, if this facility is given in central or state government run hospitals or reimbursed by the employer, it is fully exempted in the hands of employee. If the expenditure is reimbursed by the employer for specified disease or specified hospitals, again this is totally exempted in the hands of employee. But if the employee has taken treatment in general hospitals or for OPD treatment and the expenditure is reimbursed or directly paid by the employer, this is exempted up to the extent of rupees 15,000 per annum. Now we move on to education facility. If the employer has arranged for the education facility of the children of the employer, in that case, the exempted amount is rupees 1,000 per month per child, subject to no limit. Whereas in case of education allowance, there is exempted amount is 100 rupees per month per child, subject to 2 children. But in case of education facility, facility means the education services are provided by the employer either in his own school or the educational institution of other societies or other organizations run in the locality of the employee, and the fees is directly paid by the employer or reimbursed by the employer. Here the exempted amount is rupees 1,000 per month per child, subject to no limit of children. If the employer has arranged for the seminar or educational facility of the employee, in that case the amount will be totally exempted. Whatever amount the employer has spent, that will be totally exempted. Now, if the employer has arranged any facility for the education of the family members of the employee, then any kind of amount spent by the employer is totally taxable. Now we move on to any kind of club facility or the holiday facility or any kind of credit card facility, etc. These are all taxable subject to if the employee has incurred any kind of expenditure with regard to official duty, that will only be exempted. For example, the employee has spent some amount for the entertainment of the guest of the company in a club, that will be exempted. But if the employee has taken his family to the club and enjoys the facility of the club, eating, etc., and the amount is reimbursed by the employer, that will be totally taxable. Similarly, if the employee has gone for his official tour and enjoy the facility of holiday home, that will be totally exempted in the hands of employee. But if the employee has gone for family trip and enjoys the facility of holiday homes of the company or the amount spent by the employer, whatever amount it will be, that will be totally taxable in the salary of the employee. Similarly, if any kind of interest-free concessional loan is given by the employer to the employee, because the employer can give any amount of concession, any amount of facility to his employee. There is no bar from the side of income tax department. The department only says you give this much benefit and this much will be taxable. So if the employer gives any kind of interest-free concessional loan, that will be taxable up to the limits prescribed by State Bank of India. For example, the interest rates of home loan of State Bank of India is 10%, and the employer gives home loan to the employee, say at 0%, then 10% interest will be taxable in the salary of the employee. Take another example. If the employer charges 4%, then the difference between 10% and 6%, that is 6%, will be taxable in the salary of the employee. But here again we have certain benefits, like loan up to rupees 20,000. Interest on that will not be taxable in the salary of the employee. Similarly, if the employee takes the loan facility for medical purposes, again in this case, interest on this loan will not be taxable in the salary of the employee. However, if the employee has taken the Mediclaim facility, then that amount will be taken as loan, and from that date that will be considered as loan, and on that interest will be charged in the employee's salary. Further, we have benefits in the form of cash or gifts in kind. If the employer gives any kind of cash gift, this will be fully taxable in the salary of the employee. But if the employer gives gift in kind, this will be exempted up to rupees 5,000, and above that it will be taxable in the salary of the employee. Further, if the employee avails the facility of leave travel concession, then the